quietly, a single unsigned letter delivered to the Prime Minister's residence at dawn. No threats, no demands, just 4 words printed in bold: "We will not comply." By sunset, those 4 words had set the entire nation on fire. Across Albion, the councils that normally handled taxes, bins and schools were refusing to carry out a new national housing order. The directive, issued only 2 days earlier, required local authorities to host thousands of newly arrived migrants in public buildings, sports halls, leisure centres, even libraries. At first, it seemed like another bureaucratic dispute. But when the Council of Northshire publicly rejected the order on live television, everything changed. The mayor's voice trembled slightly as he said, "We cannot obey an instruction that bankrupts our towns." Those words struck a chord. Within hours, 10 more councils joined in. By noon, the revolt had spread to every corner of the country. In the coastal city of Bryport, workers chained the gates of a former conference centre meant for temporary housing. In the capital, Albion City, protesters surrounded government offices chanting, "Let the towns decide!" Police tried to contain the crowds, but it was no use. Inside the cabinet chamber, Prime Minister Rowan Clarke watched the footage with a clenched jaw. His chief of staff, a calm but pale woman named Isabel Venn, laid out the crisis report. 17 councils have formally refused compliance, another 30 are reviewing. We're looking at total paralysis by morning. Rowan's answer was a whisper. How did we lose control this fast? The truth was that control had been slipping for weeks. When the migrant housing order was announced, the public mood was already volatile. Food prices were rising, electricity bills had doubled, and the last winter's storm had left entire regions demanding aid that never came. The housing order was meant to look decisive, proof that the government could handle humanitarian pressure. Instead, it became a spark in a room full of gas. By the second evening, drones filmed protests stretching for miles. Bonfires burned outside city halls. Police lines shimmered in the rain. On the news, commentators spoke of a council revolt. Talk show hosts demanded answers. Social feeds filled with maps showing towns that had declared independence from the order. Then a new rumour surfaced that the Prime Minister had known resistance was coming and planned to crush it. At 9 p.m, a whistleblower released a set of internal memos. They suggested the government intended to invoke an emergency law, allowing national administrators to override local councils completely. The leak was explosive. By midnight, the headline read, "Downing Street prepared to seize local control." In Albion City, crowds doubled. Protesters waved both national and council flags side by side. Unity against authority. Fireworks burst over Parliament Square as the chants turned into a single roar. "No more orders!" Rowan Clarke stayed awake through the night. He sat in his study staring at the portrait of an older statesman on the wall. "He kept the country together," Rowan muttered, "with fewer tools than I have." His phone buzzed. Isabel again. "Prime Minister, the situation in Northshire is escalating. They've declared a local emergency and called in their own security. Against us? Against anyone who tries to enforce the order." Outside, the rain began to fall. Heavy, endless, washing through the capital's narrow streets. The government's convoy of black cars rolled silently toward an emergency meeting site. Inside, ministers argued in hushed tones about legality, optics, and survival. The Home Minister slammed a folder onto the table. "If we don't enforce the order, we look weak. If we do, we risk riots." The Finance Secretary replied, "It's already a riot, Thomas. We're just pretending it's paperwork." Someone suggested involving the monarchy, a televised appeal for calm. Another advised cutting off council funding. Rowan listened, expression unreadable, until he finally spoke. "You can't buy obedience," he said. "You earn it, or you lose it." No one answered. By dawn, Albion looked like a nation divided against itself. Councils ran their own emergency broadcasts. Police chiefs refused to send officers outside their jurisdictions. In Bryport, volunteers formed human chains to keep government contractors from entering the closed conference centre. Footage of them singing in the rain went viral worldwide. Across the border in Eastmere, a crowd surrounded the regional governor's car, shouting for his resignation. The Prime Minister's convoy rerouted twice that morning to avoid blockades. Even the National Rail Network suspended routes for safety. Reporters camped outside Parliament hoping for a statement. When none came, they filled the air with speculation. "Is this the end of the Clark government?" one headline asked. "A constitutional crisis on home soil," read another. Then, on the third evening, the impossible happened. The palace issued a statement. The monarch would address the nation at midnight. When the clock struck 12, every channel cut to the same feed. The king standing alone in a candle-lit hall, voice steady and quiet. "My people," he began. "Albion was built on consent and compassion. When either is lost, power becomes an empty word." He urged restraint, dialogue and dignity. He mentioned no names, offered no solutions, yet his tone carried the weight of centuries. For a fleeting moment, the shouting stopped. But silence doesn't mean peace. Behind the calm broadcasts, new negotiations began. Council leaders met secretly in a converted warehouse outside Albion City. Among them was Mayor Alara Hunt of Northshire, the first to defy the order. She spoke softly but firmly. They wanted obedience. We gave them democracy. Meanwhile, inside Downing Street, Rowan Clarke drafted what he called a temporary suspension notice. It would freeze the housing directive for review, giving both sides room to claim victory. But before he could announce it, another leak hit the media. An internal recording of a minister mocking the councils as small-town amateurs. The story spread faster than the truth. The compromise collapsed. The protests reignited with twice the fury. For 2 more days, the country hung in limbo. Blocked roads, empty offices, silent schools. Yet amid the chaos, something unexpected began to happen. People who'd never met before, citizens, councillors, even refugees, started organising food drives and clean-up crews. They stopped waiting for instructions and began helping each other. By the 5th day, the riots had faded into marches. The anger hadn't vanished, but it had transformed. Albion was tired of shouting. On the 6th morning, the Prime Minister finally appeared before cameras outside Number 10. His face looked older, his voice quieter. "I will suspend the order," he said, "and invite every council leader to the table. The country deserves solutions made by all of us, not orders from one of us." For the first time in weeks, the crowd applauded. Not loud, not wild, just a ripple of relief. Later that night, Rowan walked alone through the corridor of portraits inside Parliament. He paused beneath the portrait of the old statesman again. "Maybe keeping the country together," he whispered, "means letting it argue." In Northshire, Mayor Hunt returned to her office. She placed the original letter, the one with 4 bold words, into a drawer. On its corner, a drop of rain had smudged the ink, but the message remained clear. "We will not comply." Weeks passed. The migrant families were eventually rehoused in cooperation with local councils, not by decree, but by consent. The emergency law was repealed. Polls stabilised. The crisis faded from the headlines, but deep inside the government archives, a folder remained locked, stamped Contingency Alpha. Inside were drafts of orders that were never signed, plans for curfews, asset seizures, and nationwide communication control. One aide looked at them and muttered, "All that for an argument we never needed." He shut the drawer, turned off the light and walked away. The camera would linger on the closed file for a few seconds, the hum of distant city noise echoing softly. Then the narrator's voice, calm, thoughtful, closes the story. Every nation believes its laws are unbreakable until the people who live under them decide otherwise. Albion's revolt wasn't born from hatred, but from exhaustion, a reminder that authority is strongest when it listens, not when it commands. And though the fires have burned out, the question remains, when the next order comes, who will comply, and who will stand? Fade to black. You've been watching News Albion. Stay with us for more updates as the story of a nation rebuilding itself continues. Until next time, stay aware, stay informed, and never stop asking questions.